Hey Navigators, so today we're in Safety Harbor. I just got done shooting the Tarpon Springs episode. The weather is so amazing, and I said before I go home I should just stop in Safety Harbor and do that city too. It's the first one I did because it's the smallest city that's around here, and since I didn't know what I was doing, I figured the risk was low if I just give it a shot. So, gonna hit Safety Harbor, go through its history, check out its locations. It's a great little town in the Tampa Bay area. I'm looking forward to the ride, and so should you. Let's go hit the road. Today we're back in Pinellas County on the relaxing shores of Tampa Bay in the small, iconic town of Safety Harbor. It's so charming, it was the location of a Hallmark movie. But there's a lot more to this little town than that. Hey Navigators, welcome back to Safety Harbor. This is my last of the redo episodes. This ride was my first ride. I didn't even have a plan at the time. I just wanted to see if I could pull it off. So it was literally like a test that I put online to see if people would like it, and they did. But over the years, I've gotten better equipment, and I've kind of figured out what makes a good Navigator episode, so I wanted to come back to this cute, adorable little small town and showcase it in a way that it deserves. My wife and I bought our first house in Safety Harbor, lived there for 17 years. When we first lived here, it was a much smaller feeling town. Awesome, close to everything, but kind of still unknown. And now when I come back and ride through, it is a completely different experience. Mostly for the good, some for the not so good. I mean, some of that real small town charm has kind of been lost, as this little town has turned into a sort of destination for people to live in this area because it's adorable, and all the old stuff is being replaced by really nice new stuff. But, you know, I kind of like the old stuff too. Now, this town on the western shore of Tampa Bay has been, at various points in history, a hunting ground for Stone Age spear throwers, a battleground between warring native tribes, a pit stop for Spanish conquistadors searching for the Fountain of Youth, a refuge from Gulf Coast pirates, a Victorian-era health resort, and today, a charming little Florida town that has a tree that was already old when Christopher Columbus was still alive. And I'm certain I didn't capture all that information in the first ride. So let's start at the beginning. In June of 2008, workers at Marshall Street Park in Safety Harbor turned up a spearhead, a flint spearhead to be exact. Scientists date it to approximately 6,000 years old. 6,000 years. To put that in perspective, the Egyptian pyramids hadn't been built yet. The wheel had just been invented. And someone was standing on the shore of Tampa Bay hurling a spear at something for dinner. Now, people have never stopped coming to this particular stretch of Florida coastline, and the reason is always the same. It's beautiful, it's mild, and the water is extraordinary. By around 550 BC, the Minnesota people were here. Then the Weeden Island culture, and then by around 950 AD, the Safety Harbor culture built pyramidal earthen mounds on high ground overlooking the bay, where the chiefs lived and their temples stood. The dominant people of the region at the time of European contact were the Tocobaga, a Timucua-speaking tribe who lived in the villages all around Tampa Bay. They fished, they gathered, and they built ceremonial burial mounds from the shells of the sea. And I gotta tell you, there are still pictures of these from when people moved here in the 20s and 30s. And these shell mounds were massive. They were like multiple stories high. Now, most of these mounds were destroyed in the early 1900s by development when the people moved here, but one of them still stands today, visible in Philippe Park. A quiet reminder that this was a home long before anyone thought to name it. And then the Spanish showed up. In 1528, Spanish explorer Pánfilo de Narváez landed in the area, and he did not have a good time. The Tocobaga, who had heard stories about what Spanish explorers did to people, they were not interested in being discovered, so they fought back. Then in 1539 came Hernando de Soto. De Soto was, among other things, on a quest for the mythical Fountain of Youth, the legendary spring whose waters were said to restore youth and health to anyone who drank from them. He didn't find the Fountain of Youth, but he did find something remarkable, a natural mineral spring of unusual power and purity, bubbling up from the limestone beneath the Florida soil. De Soto named it Espiritu Santo, or Springs of the Holy Spirit. The Tocobaga and the Timucua tribes had been fishing and bathing in those springs for centuries. They knew what the water could do. De Soto, to his credit, recognized it too, even if he never quite found his Fountain of Youth. In 1549, just a decade after Hernando de Soto had named the local springs the Springs of the Holy Spirit, another group of Spaniards arrived on the shores of Tampa Bay, this time not as conquistadors, but as missionaries. Father Luis de Cancer, a Spanish Dominican priest, led a small expedition into the area with a philosophy that was, for the era, almost radical. He believed that violence and aggression were counterproductive to spreading Christianity, and he was determined to approach the Tocobaga people peacefully. Well, that did not end well. On June 20th, 1549, two of his companions, Father Diego de Tolosa and Brother Esteban Fuentes, were killed by the Tocobaga. When word reached Father Cancer, he did not turn back. He rowed to shore alone, unarmed, in one final non-violent attempt to reach the people who had just killed his brothers. He was clubbed to death on the beach on June 26, 1549. Father Cancer and his companions are now recognized as part of the Martyrs of La Florida, an important and often overlooked chapter of early colonial history in Safety Harbor. In 2015, the Catholic Church formally opened a cause for their canonization, the first step on the long road to sainthood. That's pretty cool. In 1567, a generation after De Soto's visit, a Spanish commander named Pedro Menéndez de Avilés arrived in Safety Harbor on an unusual mission. The Calusa people of Southwest Florida, the most powerful indigenous group in South Florida, were at war with the Tocobaga. The Calusa chief asked Menéndez to help him defeat his enemies. Instead, Menéndez sailed to Safety Harbor and sat the two tribes down. What followed is believed to be the first European brokered peace treaty between warring indigenous people in the Americas, right here on the shores of Tampa Bay. Menéndez left 30 soldiers and a priest behind to search for water passages across Florida, which don't exist, and to convert Tocobaga to Christianity. When a supply ship arrived about a year later, no one was found alive, and the village had been abandoned. It was the last known contact between Spanish explorers and the Tocobaga. Now let's fast forward a century or so, and the waters off Florida's Gulf Coast had become prime pirate territory. Ships loaded with cargo from the New World were frequent targets of buccaneers working the Gulf, and there was precious little a merchant captain could do, except run. If you could get your ship far enough into the shallow, protected waters of Tampa Bay, past the reach of the deep-hulled pirate vessels that could follow you into the shallows, you were safe. Sailors began to call this stretch of the bay a safe harbor, and that's the water that Philippe Park overlooks, and inspired the name of the town as Safety Harbor. In 1823, a man arrived who would leave his fingerprints on Safety Harbor in ways that are still visible today. His name was Count Odette Philippe. Philippe was known for spinning elaborate, larger-than-life stories about his past, making it difficult for historians to separate fact from fiction. In the legend, he claimed to be a French count, a childhood friend of Napoleon Bonaparte, and the chief surgeon for the French army, who was captured by the British at the Battle of Trafalgar. The reality is slightly different. Historical documents present a more grounded but complex story. While he likely did have some medical training, early records from Charleston, South Carolina, track his career as a merchant and businessman. Philippe established a 160-acre plantation, which he named St. Helena, in what is today Safety Harbor. He survived a catastrophic hurricane in 1848 by taking shelter with his family and servants on top of an ancient Tocobaga Indian mound located on his property. Today, his former estate is home to Philippe Park. He was buried on the property following his death in 1869, though the precise location of his gravesite remains a historical mystery. But they did erect a grave marker to honor him. He became the first permanent non-native settler of the area. Philippe homesteaded the land, built a life here, and, almost as an afterthought, introduced the grapefruit to Florida. Yep, that was Philippe's idea. If you've ever eaten a Florida grapefruit or drunk a glass of Florida grapefruit juice, you have Count Odette Philippe to thank. He brought the first trees here in 1823, planted them in the rich Gulf Coast soil, and changed Florida agriculture forever. Not bad for a French count who apparently just wanted a quiet place to live. During the Seminole Wars, an Army officer named Colonel William James Bailey was stationed at nearby Fort Brooke in Tampa. One day, a friendly Seminole Indian showed Bailey something that had been kept quiet for a long time: the Espiritu Santo Springs. Bailey recognized immediately what he was looking at. In 1855, after the Seminole Wars, he bought the land and the springs, made the waters available to the public at no charge, and began dreaming of what might be built there. And then the Civil War interrupted everything, as it did with most things. Bailey's daughter Virginia, a formidable woman by any measure, married a Confederate Army captain named James Felix Tucker in November of 1864. Tucker had been wounded in the Battle of Cold Harbor. He came home a hero and, with Virginia, took over her father's dream of developing the springs. After Colonel Bailey died, Captain Tucker converted the springs into a real commercial operation. He built facilities, promoted the waters, and turned Espiritu Santo Springs into a genuine destination, a place where people came from across the country to take the waters, as they said in those days, and restore their health. Tucker died in 1913. Virginia, then nearly 70 years old, didn't slow down. She kept running the springs. She partnered with a businessman named W.E. Sinclair, and in 1925, they opened the St. James Hotel right on Main Street, naming it after her late husband. The hotel had a phone in every room, hot and cold running water, private baths, and electric lights. Remarkable amenities for a small town in 1925. Its elevator was reportedly the first in all of Pinellas County. In 1926, Virginia Tucker oversaw the opening of the Safety Harbor Sanatorium, the main health facility at the springs, where guests came from around the world to drink and bathe in the mineral waters. The springs were eventually purchased by a doctor named Salem Baranoff, who continued to develop the property. Today, the Safety Harbor Resort and Spa sits on the same site, on the same springs where the Tocobaga bathed, where DeSoto stood in wonder, and where Virginia Tucker built her life's work. In 1964, the U.S. Department of Interior designated it a historical landmark. Virginia Tucker died in 1931. She was 87 years old. The mansion she built in 1923, a colonial revival beauty modeled after the Bailey family's plantation home in Virginia, which itself was modeled after the family's ancestral home in England. That's a lot of connections. Well, that building still stands today on North Bayshore Drive and is designated a local historical landmark. So are you getting hungry? Because it's that time. It's time to feed Algo the algorithm. So with the advent of AI, YouTube has to do a lot of different changes to try to not only weed out unnecessary AI content, but AI has also taken a lot of traffic that would normally go through YouTube because people are using AI to find the answers to things as opposed to people who used to go on YouTube and search for how-to videos. So it's more important than ever that little channels like mine develop a community of people that enjoy the content or enjoy the rides or any of those things. Because people naturally like to be part of a community. And one of the best ways to express being a member of a community is being a subscriber to this little channel. So if you want to support a guy like me who rides a real Navi through real small towns and does the real research and records the real audio so that you can enjoy the virtual ride with me, I'd really appreciate it if you could just take just a second to push buttons, say things, subscribe, or whatever you'd like to do. If you don't want to, that's okay. But if you could, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Safety Harbor has about 17,000 residents living in about 7,000 residences. The median home value is about $570,000. That's crazy. When my wife and I bought our first house here decades ago, it was like under $100,000. Man, inflation, gotta love it. The average rent is $2,500 a month. As far as demographics, 20% of the people are under 18. 5% are between 18 and 24, 7% are between 25 and 34, 29% are between 35 and 54, 16% is between 55 and 64, and 24% is over 65. So it looks like the two biggest groups are the people at their prime earning potential and people that are retired, or at least retirement age. As far as education goes, 97% of the residents are high school graduates, 49% are college graduates, and 4% are attending college. The per capita income is about $59,000 a year, which is $14,000 over the current U.S. average. And the median household income is about $107,000 a year, which is $26,000 more than the U.S. average. And 6% of the people live in poverty. As far as race, 73% are white, 10% are Hispanic, 8% are two or more races, 7% are black, and 2% are Asian. The first time my wife and I walked down Main Street together is because I had done a really good job at work and my boss gave us a gift certificate to spend the weekend at the spa. The weather was beautiful that weekend, and as we were walking down the street, it was just so quaint. I remember saying to my wife, you know what, I want to raise our kids here. And so every drive on the way home, I would detour my way into Safety Harbor and look for homes that we could afford. And eventually we found one, bought it, and lived in it for 17 years. I've heard a lot of people that visit this place say, you know, this place feels like one of those locations out of a Hallmark movie. And the funny thing is, a couple of years ago, this was the setting of a Hallmark movie. As a matter of fact, they didn't even change the name of the town in the movie. That Hallmark movie is called Love in the Sun. And it's not the best Hallmark movie, but it does showcase some of the more memorable locations in town. So now the residents can say, not only does this place feel like a town out of a Hallmark movie, they can say, it is a town in a Hallmark movie. Safety Harbor was officially incorporated as a city in 1917. The population at the time was 685 people. The main street was, and still is, called Main Street. And almost immediately after incorporation, the town nearly burned down. That's not a good way to celebrate. On September 2nd, 1917, just months after the city was incorporated, a fire tore through the first block of Main Street and reduced it to ash. The entire block went up. Residents used mules to haul out whatever belongings they could save. One building survived, the brick building at 200 Main Street, the one that would become Safety Harbor's first town hall, and later a bank, and later the Chamber of Commerce. It survived because it was brick. It's considered the oldest building on Main Street. During its years as a town hall, there were 2 holding cells in the back. Nobody apparently was ever actually locked in them, but local children used to play in the cells, which is either charming or slightly alarming, depending on your perspective. Not far from Main Street stands 2 survivors. First, the Hotel Francis, which was constructed in 1914 by J.D. McElveen, who named the hotel after his first daughter, Frances Viola. His wife, Helen Campbell, was the daughter of George W. Campbell, the city's first mayor. The building endured the destructive 1921 hurricane, but without much damage. The repairs also brought with it 6 upstairs bedrooms, which are apartments today. And the bottom of that building is rented out today as retail space. The second survivor of the town's fire is the Safety Harbor Log Cabin, the oldest building in Safety Harbor and the oldest log cabin in Pinellas County, and it still stands in its original location. The oldest section dates to around 1870, with bricks dated as early as 1865 and a date of November 20th, 1876 carved onto the original fireplace. The logs are hard pine, nearly impenetrable. It has stood through hurricanes, fires, development booms, and a century and a half of Florida summers. And also in Safety Harbor is the oak tree. In a parking lot shared with the public library on 2nd Avenue North stands the Baranoff oak, reportedly the oldest living oak tree in Pinellas County, estimated to be at between 300 and 500 years old. Its branches sprawl in every direction, shading an enormous area of ground. So if you do the math on that tree, if it's 500 years old, it was already a mature oak when Hernando de Soto stood at the springs less than 2 miles away in 1539. It was there for Count Felipe's arrival. It was there for the Civil War, the incorporation, the fire, the land boom, the Depression, 2 world wars. And it's still there today, next to a parking lot, near a library, watching the town go about its business. Now, when we lived here, there was no barrier around it, so my kids used to actually climb on this tree. It was really cool. They could go out under the really thick branches because the tree's so old, and they would sit there, and we made sure they took care of the tree. But as more people have moved here, they put a little barrier around it, and you're not allowed to climb on it anymore. So I'm glad our family lived here when we did, because I'm really happy my kids got to climb on this tree and they remember it fondly. I remember telling my kids that at some point there were other kids, whether they were, the Spanish or the settlers or the Tocobagans, and they climbed this tree as well. And they probably looked out over at Safety Harbor at the old ships and the sunrise. And yeah, it really connected my kids to the area. But that tree, man, it is something to behold. You just look at it and marvel at all the history that it has lived through. It's crazy. All right, we're at the end of this ride, and I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. As you know, I think time is the most precious treasure that we have. So the fact that you've spent any of that with me means the world to me. I mean that 100%. And this is my last redo ride. I've finally cut up all of my rides and taken them to the new standard. So remember, when you are out there on the road, please be safe, be kind, be generous to others. And most of all, have fun, right? All right, Navigators, I will see you guys next time.